It would seem that every year is destined to bring a new season of great controversy to Fortnite. It's like a rite of passage at this point, and 2024 was no different. Chapter 5, Season 3, Wrecked, splits the community very hard over the summer. It was the car cells versus the build jacks, the nitro fiends versus the sweatheads. Ultimately, Epic sided with the Nerf Nation and nerfed several of the new items into the ground so that they would wreck your game another day. Now, me? I stayed completely out of the debate, too busy popping just one more Nitro Splash to get through the day. But to say it was an interesting few days on the timeline would be an understatement. And with that season firmly in the rearview mirror, I've been thinking, was it really that bad? Because I enjoyed it. So let me share my case. Wrecked launched in May of 2024 with an absolutely massive update. The seasonal big bad, Megalodon, drove his Leviathan ship straight into the south coast, obliterating several locations and leaving a massive desert wasteland in their place. This biome is easily my favourite one on the Chapter 5 island. It's beautiful, it's expansive, and it has some really interesting locations. First up, the Leviathan itself, brutal beachhead, home to Megalodon himself and his mythic combat shotgun, which, I mean, that should be enough to justify dropping here. There was also Redline Rig, a really cool new take on an oil rig location, if sometimes a bit of a maze, but it was always the place to be if you wanted some good early game action. Plus, there was a, for a time, exclusive mythic combat assault rifle in it for you. Finally, my favourite of the three, the Nitrodrome. I liked this place most simply because of the car minigame in the middle pit. It was super fun and a good way to get some early game loot. Oh, and it had an infinite ammo medallion. So yeah, absolute peak. These POIs are all super dope and honestly really creative. An issue I've had with a lot of locations in chapters 4 and 5 is each new biome brings very samey feeling POIs, but that really wasn't an issue for Wrecked. With the arrival of the Wasteland, a new series of cars rolled out. Now, here's where the controversy begins. A lot of people really hated the cars. Now, don't get me wrong, getting run down by an ultra-fortified boss car is pretty annoying, but here's my perspective. Wrecked encouraged a very different playstyle for Fortnite, one many people are unfamiliar with, but it's not unwelcome to me. Fortnite Battle Royale has been ongoing for 30 seasons at this point, and one of the core fundamentals of the game's success has been its ability to change itself and keep fresh. I knew from the start of Wrecked that this would be a limited affair. Chances are we would never get another season like this, so I should enjoy the chaotic car mayhem for as long as I could because, well, is there really another game with that gameplay loop? I'd argue no. It was silly, and it was fun, and I think that's what Fortnite does best. And if you don't like it, that's fair. And Epic did eventually accommodate you by removing the cars outright from the ranked playlists. Granted, that took way too long, but that's a separate issue. Plus, it really wasn't impossible to adapt to the car meta. One of my favourite strategies was a complex one called shooting the driver. Some of the car nerfs Epic made I think were definitely justified. For me, the big one was health. Those boss cars did not need to have as much health as they did, especially with the regenerative ability, which also got cut, and the plentiful regen stations across the map. The grenade launcher also felt way too busted at the start, but for me, really after the first couple of weeks, the cars felt okay. Of course, there were more items of issue this season, namely the Nitro Splashes and Nitro Fists. The fists were a very fun item, going around and giving out knuckle sandwiches was awesome, but I can certainly understand why they were nerfed. I think that the changes to the fists later on were definitely for the better, but the same can't be said for splashes. The big issue people had with the Nitro Splash is that they enabled users to one-shot walls and allowed the user to surpass turbo building, but Epic overcorrected and nerfed them so hard they really couldn't do much of anything to build unless you damaged them beforehand. Really, it had the inverse effect of what Epic expected. It made it harder for the intended audience, casuals, to use them, but in high-level competitive, it really wasn't that much of a hindrance. Still a cool item, great for mobility, and especially funny that you could just run over water, but I think the nerfs were a little over-tweaked. Really just making them break walls in 2 hits would have been a big improvement on all fronts. Whew, jeez, at least no one had an issue with the war bus, right? I mean, if anything, it was more on the useless side, but I cherish it all the same. Now in terms of guns, you're gonna need to hear me out when I tell you that Wrecked has one of the most balanced, fun gun pools in years. The tactical and warforged rifles go together really nicely with the tax buffs, making it super viable. When the warforged got swapped out for the combat, it was a little overpowering, but not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. The Enforcer also got some substantial buffs to make it a much more reliable precision rifle than its previous appearance in Chapter 5 Season 1, where it was just outclassed in every way. The shotgun pool was unfortunately still a massacre at the hands of the Gatekeeper, but I think the reworked combat shotgun is the most fun it's been in years. The Gatekeeper has long been overdue a nerf with its insane spread, speed, and damage output, but in my opinion, the combats did at least stand a chance against it. The SMGs were at a point where they felt pretty interchangeable depending on your playstyle, which I always think is a good thing. Plus, the hand cannon was here, along with the new Conductor's hand cannon from Loot Island. Easily my favourite pistol ever conceived. Get that thing in my hands and the win is as good as ours. And brand new was the Boom Bolt. Honestly, one of the most balanced explosives. I really had no problem with this thing after the nerfs. This Battle Pass, my Goobo was it strong. Bright Raider, Rust, and the Machinist are all incredibly strong skins with great styles. Megalodon is a very cold tier 100, Fallout is one of the most fitting collabs they've ever done, and Peabody sure is here. I'd mention Ringmaster Scar, but she'd single-handedly bring the Battle Pass down from A tier to F, so let's move on. One of the things Wrecked really got right was updates. The additions of the season were spread out and it felt like each week there was something to come back for. The Fallout laser gun was an incredibly underrated rifle. With hit scan and a pretty nice damage output, I definitely saw myself using it on a few occasions whilst others slept on it for the longest time. The tow hook cannon was not one of my most used items, but in squads mode it was great fun to latch onto a friend's car and ride around shooting people. I recall it always came out of those big ammo crates, so I saw them all the time, but I rarely actually picked one up. The heavy impact sniper? I don't know. I loved using it, but it doesn't stick out to me as a sniper rifle. In fact, I kind of forgot it got added until I wrote this. Magneto power was fun. Magneto was a bit of a weird bonus skin choice, but they made him fit the season, and the power was really fun to use. Ultimately, that's what I look for in a collab item. Still not sure why it was rare instead of mythic though. The downside of the content being nicely spread out is that one of the most anticipated additions for me, the minigun, didn't get unvaulted until 10 days before the season ended. The first big event of the season saw Metallica take over the entire game. For Battle Royale, this meant a mythic guitar called Ride the Lightning. Lars would be proud. This thing was a little annoying, mostly because you could be mid-fight and your opponent would whip this out, strum away, and be gone in a literal flash. But there was also Loot Island's update, where you had to jam out to some metal to capture the point. I thought this was a really cool way of doing it. It was a unique integration of the collab. This season saw an event pass, with Pirates of the Caribbean coming to the island. I'm not usually all that interested in these events, but I must admit, I liked this one. The cosmetic pass itself was actually good, but more importantly there was Shipwreck Shallows, an awesome little pirate POI in the middle of the map. And frankly, it's criminal that it got deleted afterwards. The ship in the bottle was also an incredibly powerful item that just felt good to use. I definitely thought it would just be a reskinned junk rift, but no. This one impressed me. With the introduction of new cars, it was inevitable that new vehicle cosmetics would be inbound, since that's a thing now, I guess. The two boss cars sport very cool designs, but then there was him. Yes, this year's summer road trip event brought the Tesla Cybertruck to the island. Gross. I'm sure Epic got paid a lot for this, considering none of their own employees seems too happy about the addition. It's whatever. It's not accurate until it starts exploding unprompted anyway. Fortnite's summer events have always been hit or miss, but this one was just whatever. Some sprays and the most undesirable car of all time. Sure. Fall Guys, because fuck it, why not? The Beans had their own course above classy courts right at the end of the season. It was a silly, small minigame that I honestly enjoyed. And look at the back bling, you can't hate him. Oh man, that's a lot of content. I'm not forgetting anything, am I? Oh yeah, Reload, a brand new mode launched just a few weeks into the season, with a smaller map, nostalgic locations, classic weapons, and a refined reboot-based gameplay loop. There's a lot to love in Reload. Reload is one of those things that I can't really credit to the season itself for introducing it. It's like Zero Build in Chapter 3, but it's worth mentioning as one of the best additions in a very long time, which I truly believe it is. There are rumors that it was fast-tracked because of Wrecked's poor reception, so maybe Wrecked is to thank. It has a good content flow, and it's just generally a really valuable mode for the game. It means that they can make seasons that are more outside of the box, but players will always have a more traditional, familiar experience to fall back on. This season culminated in the Refinery event, which saw Megalodon attempting to refuel the Leviathan, but being hacked by Dr. Doom. Then the entire pipeline just exploded, for some reason, as did part of Redline Rig, exposing Pandora's box. It was a small event, but it was cool. The visuals with the nuclear explosion were stunning, and the score was really good too. I'm not really sure why anything that happened, but the build-up with the Wanderer following players around was cool too, and it was just a cool event. I had a good experience in Wrecked. 9 games out of 10, I had a good time. But I know not everyone had the same experience as me, and that's okay. A season like this, bound to be controversial. I can appreciate Wrecked because I know it's truly one of a kind. We'll never see a Fortnite like this again, and I went into this season with that in mind. Did it have its problems? Of course. Pretty much every season has done some dumb thing that makes people mad. Just a side effect of being Fortnite, like vaulting loot llamas. Why did they do that? What the hell, man? But I think this season did a lot right too. The map changes were stellar, the content flow was consistent and meaningful, the whole theme of the season was really cool, and it shows that they're willing to experiment again and try more crazy, kooky seasons. Wrecked is definitely one of the most divisive seasons. Some hate it, some love it, but I hope it doesn't discourage Epic from experimenting more and cooking up more seasons like this. But that's just my opinion, and of course, you're entitled to yours too. Oh god damn it, the mob is already outside, aren't they?